There's an interesting interview that's been put up that was done by the BBC with Alastair Campbell. And before starting the interviewer pointed out that Alastair Campbell's blog, is it a blog? It's not a blog, is it? It's a podcast with Rory Stewart, The Rest is Politics, is actually part of a company, funded by a company owned by Gary Lineker. And Alastair Campbell quite rightly took offence at that and said, well, why do you say that at the beginning, and why don't you say at the beginning of everything that you do, the BBC is run by a chairman who probably gave money or facilitated an £800,000 loan to a Conservative Prime Minister, and whose Director General had previously stood for office as a Conservative councillor, and is chairman of a local Conservative party. If you want to make these points, what's good for the gander is good for the goose, and it's absurd for the BBC to be prefacing grown-up interviews in such a childish and cowardly way. Alastair Campbell, of course, has very reasonable and perfectly good observations to make. Prefacing any interview with Alastair Campbell about his podcast with Rory Stewart is absurd. Alastair Campbell has a significantly longer history and a very important history. Similarly, Rory Stewart. I would be very happy to hear from Rory as well about this. This is a disgrace, a national disgrace, and it goes much wider than an interest in Gary Lineker. This is about the nature of the BBC and this obsession with impartiality, or this particular understanding of impartiality, is wrong. Impartiality is about generating discussion, so therefore we want to hear the views of people from different sides of a debate, from different parts of our society. This idea that we must shut somebody up because they have a view. No, actually, we want to hear that view, even if it doesn't agree or accord with our own. We want to hear that view. And this is partly my attitude with this particular YouTube channel, and one reason why I read through people's comments and tick them, and very rarely do I give anybody a negative tick. There are people I know who are out for personal abuse and for trolling, but actually, most of the time they also generate a discussion, and that must be good. That is positive. I'm far from keen to silence anybody, no matter what their opinion or no matter what the language. So free speech and enthusiastic debate, and this should be something that comes out of the BBC. If the BBC is stopping this, and indeed a lot of BBC programmes are so formulaic, they are boring. And I've been involved in making BBC programmes, so I can speak almost as an insider from that point of view. Boring and very, very repetitive in the way that they are structured and presented. It's rather like the structure that you get and that you are informed you have to follow if you are a teacher. That structure is wrong as well, by the way. We need to distinguish between teachers and mentors, and or between those who provide information and those who mentor students. And most students need mentoring, and most of the information we can get from much better sources on the internet than we can from a teacher who hurriedly looks on the internet herself before starting a lesson. Children have often got much better information already. That's my experience anyway. And the same would be true about the BBC. With the internet, this pandering to some sort of idea that the BBC is an authority is absurd. The BBC is not an authority. The BBC is a network that allows us to, or that should allow us to debate and consider and be entertained and informed.